June 15, 1752, was a stormy day in Philadelphia. People stayed indoors, fearful of lightning, except for one man who decided to fly a kite in the midst of a raging storm. That man was 46-year-old Benjamin Franklin, conducting one of his physics experiments. Franklin attached a sharp wire to his silk kite and fastened a metal key to the end of the string, which was connected to a Leyden jar, a device capable of storing an electric charge. He then sent his inventive kite into the dark sky and waited. And indeed, although the kite itself was not struck by lightning, when Franklin touched the dangling key with his hand, he felt a faint electric shock. He had managed to gather enough charge from the storm clouds, proving that lightning is a form of electricity. For most people, such a discovery would represent the peak of their career. But for Benjamin Franklin, life was just beginning to gain momentum. Franklin was born on January 17, 1706, in Boston, into a large family of British immigrants. Although his father sent him to a religious school, financial constraints forced him to drop out after 2 years. At the age of 12, Franklin started working in his older brother's print shop, spending every free moment reading. This exposed him to an entirely new world, one far removed from the religious texts of his schooling. He began to read about geometry and philosophy, and his aspirations as a writer grew. To express himself, Franklin created an alter ego, Silence Dogood, a middle-aged widow. Writing under this pseudonym, he penned texts. However, when his brother discovered that the brilliantly written texts were Franklin's, jealousy prompted him to dismiss the young writer. Franklin then moved to Philadelphia, the capital of the Pennsylvania colony. At that time, the United States as we know it today did not exist. The land was divided into British-controlled colonies. Americans generally admired Britain, so when 18-year-old Franklin had the chance to travel to London, he eagerly took it. In Britain, Franklin encountered the Enlightenment, a philosophical movement that profoundly influenced his future actions upon returning to America. His philosophy could be summed up as a better life for ordinary people. In Philadelphia, he founded a social club called Junto, aimed at sharing knowledge and contacts among craftsmen, and opened his own printing business. His newspaper, the Pennsylvania Gazette, was a success, and Franklin gradually established branches in other colonies. Franklin's fame and wealth grew rapidly. By the age of 42, he could afford to retire and devote himself to his true passion. Science. Over his lifetime, Franklin introduced numerous inventions. He designed an efficient stove that produced more heat while consuming less fuel, invented bifocal glasses, iconic in his later portraits, and created a curious musical instrument called the glass harmonica, for which composers like Beethoven and Mozart would later write music. However, Franklin's most heartfelt pursuit was the study of electricity. His kite experiment proved the presence of electrical energy in storm clouds, a groundbreaking discovery. This knowledge led him to develop the lightning rod, saving countless lives and preventing devastating fires. While he never patented the invention, allowing others to take credit, Franklin remains, for Americans, the man who tamed lightning. One thing Franklin could not do, however, was rest. When the opportunity arose in 1757 to return to London to negotiate better conditions for Pennsylvania, he packed his bags and boarded a ship. Pennsylvania's proprietors, the wealthy Penn family, had been exploiting the colony, and Franklin sought change. He remained in London, where his mission took an unexpected turn. In 1765, Britain introduced the Stamp Act, imposing a tax on all printed materials, from playing cards to newspapers. The colonies were expected to pay hefty sums to the British Treasury. Due to misunderstandings and the slow pace of correspondence, Franklin became entangled in the controversy. Meanwhile, unrest grew in the colonies, and Franklin realized that siding with Britain could lead to public backlash at home. As an unofficial spokesperson for the colonies, Franklin worked to mediate between the two sides, and Parliament eventually repealed the Stamp Act. However, new taxes were imposed, escalating tensions. When British officials accused Franklin of conspiring against the Empire, the now 70-year-old reevaluated his loyalties. He renounced Britain, and in his later years became a revolutionary. By the time Franklin returned home, America was already embroiled in the War of Independence. As a member of the so-called Committee of Five, he helped draft the Declaration of Independence, the 1776 document in which 13 colonies, today's United States, severed ties with Britain. Franklin then traveled to France to secure an alliance with King Louis XVI. While General George Washington's forces battled the British in America, Franklin laid the groundwork for modern diplomacy in France. Attending social gatherings, building contacts, and winning over the French, Franklin played a pivotal role. It took 5 long years before American and French forces surrounded the British at Yorktown, securing a decisive victory. The dream of an independent United States became a reality, but it wasn't until 2 years later, in 1783, that the Treaty of Paris was signed. The key figure in the negotiations on the American side is Benjamin Franklin, who, upon returning home, adds his name and influence to the American Constitution. He thus becomes the only person whose signature adorns all 3 fundamental documents that mark the founding of the United States: the Declaration of Independence, the Treaty of Paris, and the Constitution, the document on which the American legal system still stands today. When Franklin passed away in 1790 at the age of 84, 20,000 Americans attended his funeral. His death marked the loss of a man whose contributions had profoundly shaped modern America. Today, anyone who might forget his legacy need only look at the $100 bill, where Benjamin Franklin, the diplomat, scientist, and journalist, remains immortalized.